Hello, everyone. Welcome to this mid-year meeting, the 2024 World Sailing Mid-Year Meeting, which is another online call. Many thanks to all those who are attending, especially for those for whom it's a very antisocial hour. In particular, I know Aiko and Michael. There are plenty of others around the world that this isn't very pleasant for, but you know, we're going to spend the next 3 hours going through a fairly tight agenda. And I'm just going to run through a few bits and pieces after my welcome before we get into the meat of the meeting. I'd like to welcome in particular Vice President Sarah Kenny and Corey Sertle, who support the events committee, along with Philip Baum, who is the chair of the Governance Reform Working Party and a board member. I'd also like to welcome Events Committee Vice Chair Sophie Tedan, who's on the call. You're all very welcome. And as well as them, there are the chairs of the youth events, chairs of the Events Committee subgroups, Match Race, Team Race and Youth Events. So you're all very welcome, along with Events Committee members and all the observers watching on live on YouTube. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a kind of roll call so that all those people watching get to hear your voice and hopefully see your face very quickly. If you could, as I call your name out, if you could just say who you are, any conflict of interest that you've registered, and who you're sponsoring M&A, or what your role is if you're on the Athletes Commission or whatever. That would be really helpful. So I'll go straight to that. I'll kick off with Sophie. Do you want to unmute, Sophie? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sofia Dedin. I have no conflict of interest undisclosed, and I'm representing my sponsor M&A, Federación Argentina de Yachting.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Aiko?
Yeah, good morning. Well, good morning for me, everyone. Aiko from Japan. I'm also sitting for Team Leaders and Coaches Commission and some other working groups, but hopefully more awake through the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Aiko. Anna Holmdahl-White.
Yes, hello. My name is Anna Holmdahl-White, and I'm from Sweden, and I have no conflicts of interest in this meeting.
Thank you, Anna. Ben?
Hi, Ben Remaker from Canada. My conflicts are I'm the manager of the 49er class and the NACRA 17 class, so as such I wouldn't vote on any items if there were selections, which I don't think there are this time. I'm also chair of the Calendar Working Party.
Thank you, Ben. David Abercrombie.
David, just check your sound and your mic.
Too early. Good morning and good evening. David Abercrombie from New Zealand. I don't believe I have any conflicts of interest. Thank you, John.
Thanks. Thank you, David. Eliane?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Hello, so I'm Eliane Fierro, calling in from Mexico City in the events committee, and I have no conflict of interest.
Great, thank you, Eliane. Graham?
Yeah, hi everyone. Graham Beal representing US Sailing. No conflicts of interest.
Thank you, Graham. Guillaume?
Hello everyone, Guillaume Chirino from France. I'm managing the French Sailing Federation.
Thanks, Guillaume. Marco, welcome, go ahead.
Ciao, Marco from Italy, no conflict of interest from Italian Sailing Federation, and I'm trying to manage to switch on my camera. Sorry for this.
Good luck with that. Marcus?
Good evening, Markus Spendner from Germany. My conflicts are I'm the Secretary General of the International Kiteboarding Association, which is one of the Olympic classes, and the Wing Foil Association. So, yeah, taking that into account.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Marcus. Piotr?
Piotr Leszek from Poland. A new registered conflict of interest. I was in the bidding committee for the WSC.
Thank you for that, Piotr. Walter?
Yes, hello, John. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Walter from Brazil, from the Brazilian Sailing Federation, also team leader for Brazil at the Olympic Games. And conflict of interest, I am from the bid committee for Brazil for the 2026-27 World Sailing World. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. David Hughes?
Hi all, this is Dave Hughes. I'm representing the Athletes Commission, no conflict of interest, and I'm actually calling in from Long Beach, site of the 2028 Sailing Regatta.
That's great. Hope you're building the stadium right now. Okay. Now, Michael, there are. I haven't called out Jelly or Daniel or Sue. I think we've had apologies from them. Is that correct?
That's correct. I don't see them on our attendance list in the call either. But do speak up if I've missed someone. We have a long list here, but that matches my understanding.
Okay, that means we should have 14 voting members for the any events committee votes. Is that, you concur?
That matches, plus yourself as a casting vote should we need it.
Okay, right. Just moving into the meeting, as we've said, we are going to be tight on time, so I'm not planning a break unless somebody specifically requests it or the system goes down. So, you know, can I ask the following of presenters as we go through each of the item? Please assume that the reports have been read. I know they've come out quite late, some of them, but focuses the mind, and we need to get to the issues. I'm very keen that everybody that wants to speak gets the chance to speak. So even though we're tight on time, that's not to curtail conversation. Please, if you have something worth saying, you are an expert in this group, and we really want to hear what you have to say. In terms of the agenda itself, I'm planning to run items 6.2 and 7.2 together. They overlap. It's quota and qualification and calendar items, so we're going to run those together. And for Sarah and Corey, in terms of the board updates, please feel free if you wish to combine that with the item for Olympic Vision, and if you want item 7.1, which is progress on the plans for the 26-27 World Sailing Championships. But you can take them in order. I don't mind, whichever you wish to do. In terms of any other business, if anybody has any items at this stage they know they'd like to raise for AOB, please speak up momentarily. Just helps with the timings a little bit. You can always add later if you wish. I have one item we want to add to any other business, and it's picked up from the equipment committee meeting agenda, where there is a request for an equipment rule change by the IQ foil, proposing sail size changes, and I just want to bring it to this committee's attention about the wind range in which they sail. So we'll touch on that in AOB. Okay. Who did I say? Anybody got anything they want to say at this point in time? I'll mute.
Don't see any hands in on.
Right, thanks, Michael. Right, then a very brief update, because I know there's been a lot going on, but the agenda is aimed at covering just about everything that's been going on. But we are getting pretty close to the Paris-Marseille Olympic Games. I think 74 days to the opening ceremony as we speak. and I noticed that the Olympic Flame visited Marseille the last weekend. So a big thanks to me for all of those on this call involved in that work. We recently had the Last Chance Regatta and have now completed the qualification process for Marseille, and we will hear more about that later. But I just wanted to give a really big thanks to the Semaine Olympique Française, SOF, and the French Sailing Federation through Guillaume for sharing the load, taking on all that work, and doing such a great job. Apologies that the late papers are a little bit late, but as you know, the events team is down a member of staff. So a really big thanks to all those who've helped in the background, and in particular, Michael, for help getting this meeting prepared and organised. I think Michael's becoming nocturnal. We seem to have calls at all times of the day and night. My final point, really, in terms of the staffing, hopefully you will have seen the announcement regarding the Director of Events appointment and the start date. For those who haven't, Mr. Jim Morris, CBDSO, will join the staff in early September. So I'm sure we look forward to meeting him. And again, just thanks to the staff for stepping up in the absence of a Director of Events over the last 6 months or so. Okay, I think that's all from me from my update. I'll move into item 1.2, the declaration of conflicts of interest. I think we've pretty well covered that, Michael. Anything else we need to do?
No, but I might just ask those members who were involved in the World Sailing Championships process to choose their words carefully when it comes to reporting on this, just to ensure that the various confidentiality pieces are held until the board decision is announced, which shouldn't be too far away, but just a reminder on that point.
Yes, yeah, thanks for that. Good. Okay, move straight on to item 2, the minutes of the meeting of 16th of November 2023. They were previously circulated. We did ask for any comments and they're approved, but is there anything anyone would like to raise from those minutes? If not, straight on to any matters arising not covered in the agenda that people would like to flag up at this stage. I have none. That's great. Okay, there's sort of the formalities out of the way. I can move on to asking the board for an update. We'll just we'll start off in the usual manner. Just pass over to Michael to note the board meetings, but of course, if Sarah and Corey wish to add, please feel free to do so. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, John. As I'm sure most of the room knows, the board's met formally 3 times since we got together in Malaga at the annual conference last year. Their minutes are published online and the details are there, and I'm sure Corey and Sarah can fill us in. I think the headlines would be that there's been a considerable amount of time spent on various legal matters. Obviously, nationality and the Russian and neutral athlete topic has taken a fair bit of their focus. They've overseen the work, obviously, of the governance reform process, of which that working party is leading on, but also some points on the upcoming elections at the end of this year and some new rules and pieces going in place there. There's been a considerable number of new policies the board have considered, things like safeguarding, transgender and our inclusive policies. Some of those are not finalised just yet, but those are topics that have been on their agenda. A good number of decisions on hosting various of the world sailing events, whether it's match racing, teams racing, and some of those other properties that World Sailing owned, and seeing those contracts through. And of course, the finances, which is always a topic for any not-for-profit organisation. That would be the majority of the issues. I don't think there's anything too specific that's not already on our agenda from the board, but Sarah and maybe then Corey, please feel free to add anything more.
Thank you, Michael. I think you might have just done my update, but I will cover a brief update and I will mention a few points around the Olympic vision, and then I'll hand over to Corey and she can update to the extent we can on the Sailing World Championship. Obviously, it's a huge year for the sport this year, with the games approaching and the America's Cup still to come. But we've also we've got the Youth World Sailing Championships just before the games in Lake Garda, the Bondi Globe, numerous class, youth, women's and world championships in the calendar over the next 6 months. Since the conference in Malaga, we've had some great events, some of which Michael mentioned, but we had a very successful Youth Sailing World Championships in Buzios. The Last Chance Regatta was really an outstanding success despite quite challenging weather conditions, and the board also extends their thanks to the French Federation and the regatta organisers. It will be our largest number of nations at the Games this time around. And I think we've got most of the countries who've earned places looking to be able to accept those, with a few issues still to work through. As Michael mentioned, we have had quite a lot of new policies we've had to focus on, and a couple of the key ones, we've updated safeguarding again, which will be on Council's agenda. We have also developed a new transgender policy, which is also on Council's agenda. We have approved a women's strategy earlier this year, which will be released as part of Steering the Course later this month. And we also are looking at our next board meeting at a new para-inclusive sailing strategy, which obviously is extremely important for the continued growth of the sport and hopefully the re-inclusion of sailing in the Paralympic Games. We also have our first World Sailing Sustainability Annual Report due to be published over the next few weeks. We have the annual conference in Singapore, oversight of getting the contract bedded down there and working on the agenda, and Corey's been closely involved with that, so she can add anything she'd like to share when she speaks shortly. In terms of the office, they're working incredibly hard as always. We have some new people coming on board. As John said, we have our new Director of Events, Jim Morris. He will start on the 1st of September, but we hope he's planning, I think, to be in Marseille for a few days to experience our major event, which will be wonderful. And I think you'll all be delighted to hear that our next hire is an IT manager. As Michael mentioned, in terms of finances, something we keep a very close eye on. Our cash flow forecast remains positive for the quad, which wasn't the position we were in last quad. We've got Ratchka and her team to thank there for the incredible job they do, the supervision of Marcus Spillane in particular, to help ensure that we're tracking well in terms of our finances. David and team are working really hard on commercial opportunities. You probably saw the Kuehne + Nagel contract. Sponsorship has come into place. It's a tough market, as no doubt everybody knows, but they're working very hard, and we're hopeful that we'll see some new commercial opportunities in the near future. Governance reform is on track, thanks to Philip Boehm, John Napier, Vasi and their teams, and the broader network of volunteers who've been assisting with that process. A huge amount of complex and not the most scintillating of work for the organisation to get through, to ensure we're on track to implement our new governance in full later this year. We have a great relationship between the board and the staff and our CEO and the council, and we're delighted with the way in which we've all been able to work together. In terms of the Olympic vision, as you all know, thanks to urging from this committee, we were able to finalise and have approved in Malaga last year our Olympic vision. It's proving to be a very useful document. I'm delighted when I hear it mentioned in ad hoc conversations as much as more formally. It is providing a roadmap for what we need our sport to be for the future. In terms of, we're now really in the implementation phase, and this is going to be a key objective of Jim Morris working closely with Michael. I think we will talk a fair bit about how the Olympic vision has shaped the working of this committee in particular, but I know a couple of the Olympic classes in particular, or more than a couple, have been very active in looking at new format to address the marketability of our sport. Sustainability is front of mind, particularly in terms of travel and equipment, and we're very hopeful that the Olympic vision now will help guide better decision making. So I guess from here on in, we'll hear a lot more about it, and I'm sure that we'll hear more about that as we go through our agenda. I will hand over to Corey now to cover the Combined Sailing World Championships and anything else she wants to add on the Singapore conference. But just before I do, to thank you all again. Incredible work that has been done, very active since November. A few difficult topics that have taken a lot of time, and thank you for your time, and look forward to the discussion today. Corey.
Thank you, Sarah. And again, I echo Sarah's thanks to all the volunteers on the call and for all your tremendous efforts above and beyond for our sport. Sarah asked me to comment on two things. I have been closely involved in our upcoming annual conference in Singapore, working very closely with Nelia. And Nelia's done a tremendous job working with our friends in Singapore to pull together a good conference, taking account of all of the comments that we received in Malaga about how to make the conference better. We will be changing it up a little bit by having some introductory council sessions at the beginning of each day, at the beginning of the week, starting November 4th, to help have all the stakeholders hear things at the same time and to have all the reports presented at the beginning. You'll hear more about that in the upcoming week when we are able to publish all the documentation and at the council meeting. With regard to the 2026-27 Sailing World Championships, I been part of the bid evaluation commission that worked over the last couple weeks to receive all the bids. And as taking Michael's lead, I would just like to say thank you to the bidders, and thank you to those on the bid evaluation commission for all of our deep consideration of these tremendous bids that we received. And stay tuned. We will be considering it at the board later this week, and we hope to be able to make an announcement shortly thereafter. So with that, John, concludes my remarks.
Corey, Sarah, thank you. Thanks very much indeed for those comments. Really insightful, and you do have my sympathy. I know the board's had an incredible amount of complex topics to deal with, and I think as we go through this, sometimes we see some of the issues we've raised, and they keep coming back, and it's just to keep them on your agenda when you hopefully get a slightly quieter time sometime in the near future. I do owe you, Corey, a response about the Singapore, about the events committee pre-meeting. I haven't forgotten, been a bit wrapped up with this, but the answer is yes, but I'll respond tomorrow if that's okay. Yes, the note about the Sailing World Championships, Michael mentioned it. There are an extraordinary number of bidders and commission members around this call, but we must respect the board making their decision later this week and hopefully being able to announce it. Good. Okay, I think that takes us through item 4, the Olympic Vision. It has proved very useful, and you can see it throughout nearly all the documents we have for this meeting. But now we're going to turn to the upcoming Paris Olympic Games. And the first thing we're going to do is receive a report on the Paris Olympic Games from the Olympic manager, Michael. So if I can hand over to you, Michael, to lead on this, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, John. As I'm sure the group knows, the work on Paris started some years ago and it's coming very much to the culmination point. We've had the test events last year, which was incredibly valuable. We've taken lessons from the Hague 2023 Sailing World Championships and, of course, some Olympic Française and the Last Chance Regatta as well. That learning has really put us in good stead, I think, going forward. Right now, if we were to be told tomorrow to run the Olympics, we believe we could. We have great confidence in the workforce and the team there to deliver a sailing competition that is at the level that we need. There are, of course, small little things to remain, to polish, to try and get the maximum out of this major opportunity for our sport that happens once every quad. And that there's a few points to do there. And of course, with unlimited budgets, they would be easy to solve, but nobody has that. I take the opportunity just to remind everyone, particularly those following along online, that the paris2024.sailing.org domain has all the documents you need that have been published, whether it's qualification information, racing rules, general information about shipping, medical, etc. And finally, if the answer is not there, then the answer is with your National Olympic Committee. Your National Olympic Committees are the ones who are the entity involved in the operations of the Games, and so they have all of the details. So please, if there's anything that everyone takes home from this report, it is make sure you have a strong dialogue with your National Olympic Committee. I do point out a couple of other points, particularly in broadcast and technology. OBS continue to invest in our sport, which is wonderful, and their ongoing support's appreciated. I won't reveal their surprises other than to say there's some great new innovations coming to Olympic sailing. Some of it is very impressive miniaturization of other tech. Some of it's new things that the sport hasn't seen before. All of this bodes well to putting sailing front and center amongst all the other sports and disciplines of the Games. That obviously plays into digital officiating as a core piece of where our sport is now and where it's going, and it's all extremely positive. John, if you're happy, I'll bleed straight into 5.2 unless there's any questions from the group, and just talk about the qualification that has come to pass already towards Paris 2024.
Yes, sure, Michael. I just pick up one point because from your Paris 2024 staff report, in the bottom of item 2.3, you said the final there's generate renewed interest from media rights holders. The final step is to transfer this interest into increased audiences, which will take a whole of sport effort within each country and territory. I think I have mentioned this before. This is where our council members can really help by asking their NOCs to show sailing. Is that the right approach, Michael?
Absolutely. At this stage, OBS as the broadcaster have their cameras in the right place. We have our athletes doing their best and the race officials preparing. What we need to do is make sure that the local TV station, the local websites and the local news outlets in your territory are looking for sailing. It doesn't happen automatically, whether that's through your National Olympic Committee, through your local broadcaster, through your M&A. Actively make sure you know where sailing is, what time it's on, and that your membership know that. There's no point saying afterwards, I didn't know it was that time. That doesn't help us. All the effort of our sailors needs to be rewarded. So please make sure you've got that active dialogue with the broadcasters in your territory. If you don't know who they are, we can help you with that. But at this point, we have to just join everything together. All the pieces of the puzzle are there, and it's just bringing everything together to watch this great opportunity for our sport.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, yeah, ready to go with 5.2, and I'll just intro it by saying, obviously, Daniel Belcher is the chair of the Quota and Qualification Working Party. He unfortunately can't be here with us tonight, but Michael is the staff that supports that, and this first section on Paris is really the data behind the Q&Q process we've just been going through. So over to you, Michael.
Thanks, John. I won't dive into it. It's been a 2-year process as the rules set out. There's a lot of data there that the members can read through, but I'll just cherry pick a few points for everyone. We had 14 qualifiers this time around. That's a reduction over the last few quads towards 50% compared to a couple of games ago, which is definitely in the right direction. However, there are still a few qualifiers which are not sustainable. They just don't have the entry numbers at this point, and I know that topic will get picked up a bit later. We do need to look into that, particularly the continental qualifiers. We have 145 M&As in world sailing, and the best one event could do was 81 of those M&As trying to qualify. So that there is still considerable growth available within our own market, not to mention that there's 205 national Olympic committees around the world. So we do have plenty of growth opportunities. You can see in some of the stats there of how each continent went in terms of participation. And this is probably the key metric. Those who qualified is the second step, but step one is participation in a qualifier. And we have some good numbers, but we can do better. Different continents and different events have different levels of engagement. I think it's probably worth highlighting the difference between male and female participation. There is work to do there, and we know Steering the Course and those other initiatives of world sailing are part of it, but we need to make sure that goes all the way through the depth of our sport. And there's also a gap, which wouldn't surprise anyone, between the one-person and two-person events, where the one-person events clearly having much more global take-up than the two-person events. As we turn to the actual qualification, congratulations to those countries who have qualified. The process is still open at the moment. Since the last chance regatta a couple of weeks ago, which was a tremendous success, as was said earlier, we now have 66 national Olympic committees have received invitations for the games. That there may be a few more if not all places are accepted, but we are on track to have more national Olympic committees at the games this year than the past few years. And that's really worth noting because our quota has continued to shrink. As a reminder, Sydney 2000 and Beijing 2008, Athens 2004, we had 400 athlete quota. We're down to 330 at Paris 2024, and yet we've still managed to grow the number of countries participating in our competition to 66. So we're doing plenty of things right on the universality front, and there are a number of nations who are making their Olympic debut. There's a lot of data that we can dive into there, but I won't in the interest of time, but I'm available to take any questions if any of the committee members have. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Any questions or comment from anybody now? It's absolutely fine to feed in after this meeting. There's no decision required on any of this. Guillaume, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just so 74 days before the opening ceremony and 76 before the first sailing competition. So we have 2 more days to go. As Michael said, we can say that almost everything is ready. As you can see on the picture, the water is just perfect. And we had the Olympic torch, which arrived on May the 8th, and it was a really, really big moment for our sport because, as you probably know, it arrives in Marseille, and at the evening we had 200,000 people on the Old Harbour on Le Vieux-Port. So it was really interesting because a lot of people in Marseille, but in the country, said yes, well, it's the beginning of the games. They are all really, really interesting in the games now. It becomes real for them. So I think for our sports, it's a great chance to have this torch starting in Marseille. So the torch spends one day on the 9th in Marseille, and now we'll go until Paris in all France. Regarding the last chance regatta, thank you for your words, and it's important to say that most of the ITU and NTU were in the last chance regatta, so I think it was a really good training for the team too, not just for the sailors. It was a really big event. I think at the beginning I was not a big supporter of grouping some continent spots, but I think Ben put this idea forward, and I think it was a really good idea. So congratulations, Ben. And I think for our federation, for World Sailing, I think it's really interesting to have this big event because to have all 10 classes, something like 90 nations fighting for the last spot. It was really interesting. So I think for our sport, it was really nice.
Thank you, Guillaume. And yeah, we will talk more about the Last Chance Regatta when we get onto the LA Games section. But it sounds really exciting what's going on down there in Marseille, and we wish you and everyone every success as it all comes together. Having experienced the home games myself, I can sense where you are right now. So yeah, enjoy it. Enjoy the moment. Any other comments? On that item? Back to Michael. If not, I'll ask Michael just to go into item 5.3, please.
Thanks, John. I'd also just mention that the audio stream for those online has been addressed. There's a new channel, so that should be picked up and going out, because I've had a few messages about that as well. Well done, tech team. So 5.3, as many will know, we had some challenges at the test event regarding the format in the windsurfing events for the IQ foil. Those challenges did extend through to other events across the summer where new ideas were tried and tested. After a very long process, the outcome that we come to today and the recommendation for this committee to decide on has two steps to it. Compared to the format that we have currently been using, we put in place two things. Number one is we, in the final only, so not the semi-final, not the quarter-final, but the final, we offer a 5-second penalty for a boat that has started early, and then we restart the race. This has the benefits of keeping enough boats on the start line, but makes it clear to the audience watching who's leading and who's not. There is a series of rules in the recommendation about what to do for a second and third restart to address that. The other key part of the recommendation is how many restarts do we allow? As we know, trying to stick to a TV schedule is fundamental to a successful product going out. The broadcasters and the rights holders have made super clear that sailing, to put its best foot forward, needs to start on time, and that is each race. The semi-final, the quarter-final, and the final all need to start on time. So to know when that is, we need to control the number of general recalls, and the proposal is to limit the number of general recalls to 2, unless of course the race committee can't see who is over, but with a small number of boats on the start line, this is most unlikely. And so that to put in a policy in place to limit the number of general recalls to 2, so that we can manage the time and the delivery of the schedule for all parties concerned. The recommendation in the paper before you has a number of details on how to address boats who started early in subsequent races and address various what-if scenarios. We believe we've covered everything that is likely. I'm never going to promise all scenarios are covered. But those are the two key rule changes. The rest of it is policy changes guiding the race officials for the delivery of that. Other principles that are there, same as we would in a medal race. In the medal series, any boat that is OCS will be asked to leave the race course, so that as we get to the finish line, only those boats who are legally going to finish the race will cross the finish line, to make the story easier to understand. As you can see, most of those elements were tested at the Last Chance Regatta, so that the rules and sailing instructions are in place, that the sailors have sailed a number of races with these rules in place. The only element that was not in place at the Last Chance Regatta was limiting the number of recalls to 2. there was only one recall at the last chance regatta. So the scenario didn't even occur should we have needed it. Advice from the class and those who've run racing is they have not had more than 2 general recalls anyway. Hence that limit seems to be quite comfortable to work with. That's the short version. There is obviously a lot of detail behind this, which you have in the paper, but I stand available to take any questions and then for your consideration, that recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Yeah, for those people who are observing, should have said we have got a paper with recommendations in front of us, and the background to this has been debated through the format working party previously, and then shared with the class. And Sophia Tedan chairs the format working party, but this item was led by Piotr, and so I'm going to ask for any comments and questions, because we will have to take a vote on this. Hopefully we can take the recommendations on block, but if anybody's got any particular issues, then please let me know by putting your hand up, and I'll pass first to Piotr. Thanks, Piotr.
Thank you, John. I just like to thanks Michael first for leading this and having it tested at the last chance regatta. We did have an extended period of implementing this. It took a long time. We started back in September, or even back at the test event when we identified the issues. And some of the issues that we were testing here were already discussed and approved by the events committee back in November, when we discussed the 5 or 10 second penalty to be tested. That was first tested by the class, but then was also discussed with us at the format working party, together with the class and the chiefs. So I feel comfortable saying that this I understand, will not change the life of the sailors or the way that the IQ foil sailors are racing, but it's also something that the chiefs support in the way that it's a legal way to conduct the races for the Olympic Games. Thank you.
Thanks, Piotr. Anybody else got any comments, observations they'd like to make? This item. Can't see any hands going up. Yeah, is that Anna?
Yeah, no, Sophie.
Oh, Sophie, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank both Piotr and Michael for their work in this subject. I mean, it was a very deep conversation. There was a lot of scenarios analyzed, and I think the whole working party came up with a solution in a limited amount of time that could be tested and please both the class and the organizers, and it will fit what was needed to be fitted. So again, thanks all for your work.
Thanks, Sophie. Yes, I still think there are potential issues to be ironed out for the next games, but I think we've gone as far as we can with these games. And if anybody doesn't want to support these recommendations, please speak now. Otherwise, I will assume that by assent that they're supported. So anybody who doesn't want to support these, just say so in the chat. Okay, you happy with that, Michael? I think we've got assent there. Well done.
Thank you, John.
Good. Yes, and we move on to item 6 and 6.1. So I'm just looking at the slides up on the screen, but my notes, item 6.1. So report from the format working party on proposals for the LA Olympic Games. So we've dealt with the 2024 quad. We're looking at the next quad now. I'm going to hand over to Piotr shortly, and thank you for the paper. It highlights some of the challenges we have experienced in this cycle and how we can align going forwards with for the next cycle and with the vision that we've heard a little bit more about. Okay, what we're looking to get out of this next discussion is some input so that the Format Working Party can consider that, come to November meeting with a final report, and in the meantime there are some actions as well, but there's no hard and fast decisions in this. It's just input and discussion. Piotr, over to you.
Okay, thank you, John. So at the Format Working Party, we are very happy to have the overarching roadmap of the Olympic vision in place. Although we understand that the Olympic vision is for 2032, it is also important to understand that before we get to 2032, we have 2028 and the LA Games. So in our understanding is that we should not revolutionize, but we should make an evolution of the formats so that we get in a smooth way to the Olympic vision when we get to the Games in 2032. So first of all, we all agreed that the Format Working Party, that the formats that we are looking for 2028, they should all be technology friendly. And this is technology friendly in two ways. First of all, they should allow to take full advantages of the possibilities of using digital officiating at all stages of the regatta itself. Secondly, they should allow us to use any kind of instant replays, graphics, and the statistics that I know we'll already be seeing in Paris, but I hope that we'll see even more, and we will make it easier for the organizers to use them at the LA Games. Next, we have considered that it would be good to have consistent formats, and we have a recommendation of using two formats across the Olympic slate. The naming, of course, is not final, and please don't consider it as final, but what is behind the naming, I think, is something that we should consider. First, what we call the high engagement. This format should have straightforward and easily understandable rules. Viewers should be able to grasp the basic objectives and how points and victories are scored. The format concept should draw from common sports to assist non-sailors in understanding the sport of sailing. The format should avoid excessive complexity in rules or scoring systems, as simplicity helps viewers engage more readily with the sport. The second format that we'd like to use is something that we are naming traditional. Traditional is a format that mimics what is done at local clubs in order to allow the grassroots of the sport to be able to directly identify what they see and do what is happening at the Olympic Games. What is important, we feel that for both high engagement and traditional formats, leaders and winners should be easily identifiable. Next, we go to the opening series, where we've discussed that it is important, we feel that it is important to reduce the number of days of the opening series to 4 for all of the events. This would be a reduction from 4 or 5 as we have it now. We see the benefits as saving the venue requirements and workforce, saving resources, environmental impact and sustainability, and potentially a more fair and exciting finals, as we shortening the event duration may leave the playing field, duration may level the playing field by minimizing the differences in the number of points before the final. Now, next, we have looked at a number of possibilities for the finals and have identified one that we would like to recommend for testing. First, the opening series would be very similar to what we have now. The only difference is that the top 3 would advance to the final itself. In the semi-final, places from 4 to 8 that is still to be determined, but this is the number we were discussing, would be fighting for the additional spot in the final itself. The final would have 4 boats to compete for the podium places. Other options may, of course, be evaluated, and we look forward to working with the Olympic classes, and I'll say a little bit more about that later, on the formats that they would like to prepare. The next, and I think this is very important, is the shared equipment. We understand that it will be a little too early to have shared or supplied equipment for all of the events in 2028. But we do have here a recommendation, and I think this is a recommendation for the board, that we would like the Olympic vision to start now. And in order to do that, we feel that there is a disconnect between the Olympic vision and the Olympic contracts. And we recommend that all contracts are revised to enable and encourage supplied equipment from the Olympic classes. Point 7, and this is the last point in our report, is collaborating with the Olympic classes. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of those Olympic classes that have been doing the work on working on new formats and making sure that their new formats also align with the Olympic vision that is in place. I know that all of the classes represented here, I understand Kite, NACRA, and 49er have been working on new formats, and I know the other classes have also been working on new formats, setting up working parties of their own. We would love to work with those Olympic classes and suggest that the classes send their proposals for the formats for the Olympic Games in 2028 to the working party, and we set a deadline of July 1st, 2024. In this way, we can evaluate those formats proposed by the Olympic classes, see how they align with the Olympic vision and this paper, and have a report ready for consultations in September 2024, that it is consulted before the annual conference this year. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Piotr, and thanks to yourself and the working party for pulling these points together. I'm keen to have a discussion on this, and I don't mind whether people don't have a general one or pick on specific points. Either way, but it would be useful to know which points they are very comfortable with, any points they struggle with. Otherwise, we'll be able to endorse this, and the direction's good, and continue with that. So anybody who'd like to put the hand up and speak, make any comments or observations? Yes, Ben, please go ahead.
Hi, Piotr. Thanks for the clear report. That's very helpful, and for all the work in the background. I've got 3 things I'd like to bring up. First point is aiming for 2 formats. I think that's likely a good starting point as a tactic for 2028 and potentially 2032. But I just wanted to point out that it shouldn't be enshrined too deeply in anything. If we were to readopt offshore, for example, we wouldn't still stick to 2 formats. So it's a good guideline for us for now. Number 2. Supplied boats. We see this referenced a number of times in the Olympic vision, but it's not yet been clearly communicated what exactly the problem is and how supplied boats is solving it. At least it's not clear to me. I've been hearing rumors about the IQ foil equipment handout, and certainly believe that it took, or the plan was that they had to send out 4 sets of gear in order for the athletes to then reselect 1 set of gear for the game. So it's not totally clear to me how provided equipment is solving any of our problems. But so I look forward to maybe the board, or I'm not sure whose responsibility it is, to articulate what we're trying to do with supplied boats. And then on the July 1st deadline, both of the classes I manage have internal working parties working on this for format, and we've been liaising with the other Olympic classes as well. And we may be able to send you stuff on July 1st, but I think some of the testing and work we're going to do may continue beyond that. So hopefully we can keep continuing after that point as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. I'm not going to ask Piotr to respond to each of the points. We'll note those comments. I think, I think we all agree that actually with the idea of aiming at 2 slates, not 10, just confusing for the viewer. And just on the shared equipment, I'm very happy if a board member wished to speak, but my understanding was the principle is the aim is to reduce costs and widen participation opportunities by minimizing the equipment. So, sorry, by sharing equipment or some other solution that can do similar. But if someone from the board wants to add to that, is that Sarah?
Yeah, John. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, Ben, it's really around sustainability, and yes, there have been issues in other classes, but that's not a reason not to have the goal and the vision. So it's sustainability, but also increase in accessibility. And as we know, in the two-handed classes, that's much harder. When we're moving boats around the world, there's a higher cost to participate, a barrier to entry. So it's really just looking at how, we can have options at least where we can improve on those objectives.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other comments? I'm very happy to take them. Yes, Marcus, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. One question. I don't know if that can be answered from that format that has been prescribed, the evolution of the final. Would that fit more in the direction of the traditional format or the other format? And I'm not sure where this traditional format is standing in terms of, does that mean something like the current medal race format, or in which direction you're thinking there? And the other comment, probably also for clarification on the supplied equipment. We had that discussion about equipment that can be flown, so windsurfing, kites, probably wings in the future, or equipment that needs to be shipped. And echoing a little bit what Ben said, I'm not sure at the games it might be working, but still people need to go and qualify. They need to train, and they might come before the regatta and want to train. So I think this whole topic needs much more discussion. We all agree on the requirements for sustainability and making it more accessible, but I think, yeah, there needs to be more discussion on this.
Yep, thanks, Marcus. I agree. I think there will be a lot more discussion on it, and we note your comments. Piotr, did you specifically want to respond to the question on the evolved format? I took it to be the traditional 10-boat medal race that you were referring to. Is that correct?
If I can point to a sentence in this report that I think is important, that for both high engagement and traditional formats, leaders and winners should be easy to identify. I think this is a key point that we should take into account.
Good, thank you. Okay, if there are no more comments, no one else with their hand up, then Piotr, I think you've got the support of the events committee to continue the work you're doing. We've got some more feedback. If anybody else has anything they want to add into, then please send it through in the next few days. I think the one issue that Ben did raise was the proposals by July the 1st. That's just really helpful, but I know Piotr has some flexibility on that, but realistically, if he wants to get a paper out by the end of September ahead of the November meeting, it's can't be much later than early July. So if you have got a class that's got format changes, please share them with Piotr. But good to hear that those classes around here are open to change and also open to, you know, to being adapted to fit in with 2 or 3 slates rather than 2 or 3 formats rather than 8, 9 or 10 formats. We don't want everyone doing something different. Okay, you happy with that, Piotr? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, just once again, thank you to the Olympic classes for being on board. I look forward to working with you and our whole working party on the evolution of the format. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving then to item 6.2. We're going to receive a report from the Quota and Qualification Working Party regarding possible approaches for the LA Olympic Games. We're going to combine items 6.2 and 7.2 from the event strategy, the calendar, and we've got some items for discussion. Just to sort of give a bit of background, particularly to those who haven't got the benefit of the paper in front of them. The background is that when the World Sailing Championships bid process was being put together, the question was asked by Corinne McKenzie, who was responsible for leading the work on that. How would we allocate quota for the World Sailing Championship events? And so we had a discussion with Daniel Belcher, and then quickly realised that qualification and quota and calendar were so interlinked that we needed to have that discussion, which we did, and created a paper that the first few paragraphs really went straight to the bid commission for them to help and guide their thinking through the process. And I hope we're not going to need to go through all those because that work is done and dusted. So the focus for this discussion is really on items 8, the quota allocation considerations, continental championships considerations, and the last chance regatta. At least that's where I'd like to focus it, and any other considerations. So it's the latter half of the paper I think we're trying to focus on. Just bear with me 1 minute. Right, Michael, is there anything you'd like to add in Daniel's absence on this item that's not covered? Feel free to take us through the paper if you don't want to add to the intro.
Thanks, John. I think probably at this point the working party is just looking for feedback. No decisions are required today, and no decisions will be required by this committee. What we need to do at the end of this committee's term is to give as much knowledge as we can to the next events committee, so that when they come to making these decisions next year, they have the benefit of all the learning and experience that this group has compiled over this quad. There is little point in making binding decisions until we know exactly our event slate and our event quota, which is due from the AOC sometime after Easter next year, so that we will see the Olympic Games happen. We'll have our annual conference, and then we'll start to get feedback, as I said, Q1 next year. So at this point, it's more about the direction of travel and theory. I think the key points of when in the cycle to hand out places and how to group the handing out of those quota places is the core of the conversation. But I would assume that most people have read the paper, and it's a long paper because it came out a couple of weeks ago. So John, I would open the floor for discussion.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think you know, what's in the paper is interesting, but I know a few people have spoken to me and they have some challenge for the paper, and that's really welcome. So don't, you know, feel free to add to it, even if it's not in line with it. It's all really helpful for the Q&Q and calendar working parties to develop further. Who'd like to kick off? David, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, John. I think if you read the paper, it clearly outlines the complexity that we're dealing with around the Olympic vision and sustainability, I see some big challenges, as is recognised in the paper, with regards to moving equipment and the amount of equipment that's required just to compete in these events. So I think we've got a real challenge on our hands, and I'm not quite sure I understand the answer to it all. But if you look at outliers like those of us in the South Pacific, you know, you need equipment in this part of the world to sail and train, and you need equipment in Europe and potentially a third continent. The time elements in transferring equipment, and I think they're challenging and expensive for us all, and they don't do a lot for our carbon footprint either. So this shared or supplied equipment discussion is something that needs a great deal of thought. I understand the expense that will create, but again, if we reflect back on some of the ideas around that are coming up around the Youth World's multi-year events, doing deals with manufacturers, I think there is a way around it, but I'm not sure how quickly you can bring that to fruition. But just want to recognise that it's a great piece of work, but I'm just not quite sure what the answers are at the end of it all.
Thank you, David. Ben?
Thanks. I'm excited for this quad upcoming, because I think it's the first one where we've got the calendar that can be enabled. Last quad was messed up by COVID a little bit. I think without revealing anything, I can say that while we were talking through the various bids, the staff workflow became a key driver, and how it fits into the calendar is important. And the reason I bring that up now is because there's a proposal that is going to come to us later today about splitting the Youth Worlds in two, which would double the workload for a couple times in the quad that the staff has to deal with at the same time. So I don't know if maybe we'll talk about it a little more then, but I'm looking forward to the staff having one event at a time at a steady pace through the quad, and I think that'll help them, you know, execute good work and also allow them to build onto all the sort of frills and additions that we might like to have on these events without being under so much pressure to do other events at the same time. On a more detailed matter, on the qualification flow, like last quad, there's a proposal for the ILCA to have an extra qualifier in and have an extra qualifier at a world championship. I think that's a misguided way for us to aim at the ILCA qualifying. ILCA gets the most quota so that we can reach deeper into the number of nations participating than any other class or any other events. And by having a four-legged qualification system, essentially we're saying that that's going to be 33% more expensive to try and qualify than any other system. So every event but the ILCA has 3 chances to qualify, and then the ILCA, the proposal is 4. I think that just adds expense to everyone. We should hand out more places at each stage rather than having an extra stage. And then the final thing to highlight is that while the continental qualifying did get a little bit better this time, it was still pretty ineffective as a way to get more countries to the games. Outside of ILCA, 31 of the 40 spots went to nations that had multiple teams already going. Typically, those were, you know, G20 and top sailing nations. So while we may say that the continental qualifying is to try and broaden our reach, it's really just enabling some big countries to have an advantage over other big sailing countries. So, you know, we got to be either comfortable doing that just for geographic reach, or engage in the core mission, which is to extend sailing deeper into the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Just to that last point, I'll come to one moment, Marcus. Just to that last point, do you consider that for the next 2 quads, the US and then Australia, they'll get full quota already? as a given? Is that going to increase the challenge there?
Well, it exacerbates the issues we have with lack of competition in North America and Oceania specifically.
Yeah.
But they're already there with or without the local events happening. So.
Okay, worth considering. So thanks for that. Okay, Marcus. Marcus, you had your hand up, but you're still muted. Would you like to speak?
Sorry, apologies. Yeah, apologies. I'm on the phone now and I'm trying. I wanted to highlight the success of the Last Chance Regatta. I think we should probably work more in that direction and assign potentially more places to that. Having qualification late in the quad gives especially new countries that are trying to catch up an opportunity to actually have a chance, and it keeps the whole fleet and the whole sailing world longer involved in sailing and not dropping off earlier. So I think that is an observation that has been shared by many. That was the one point, and the other point, following up on Ben, the continental qualification and how many places we are assigning at what stage. As Ben said, it has become better, but I think it is still far from ideal, especially for the classes or for the events with low quota. We can try to have a big reach or deep reach in all the regions in the world in the ILCA for those events with small quota, and it might be even smaller quota in the next quad. It becomes a challenge when some of the places are hardly contested, and still countries basically can go to the games by signing up for the qualifier regatta, and that's probably not what we should be aiming at.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. I think we got that. It was a bit of background noise, so I didn't quite hear it all, but we'll have that recorded, hopefully, with those comments. Anybody else have any other comments? I'll just pick up on the Last Chance Regatta, I think. Okay, Aiko, I'll go to you then. Aiko, please feel free to speak.
Yeah. I have seen ILCA World Championship, ILCA 7 World Championships and the 470 World Championships, as well as the Last Chance Regatta myself. And I found ILCA has a very special background, having more than 60 countries. And 2 World Championships were quite good to have them to select the countries. And also for 70 Worlds, they used the continental qualifier at the World Championships in Palma. And USA managed to qualify as North Americans. So shipping boats, it may be worth to think about the World Championship as a part of the qualifier too, because that's we managed to do the African qualifier too. And the Last Chance Regatta was really good. But one thing I point out is developing nations quota. We need to consider, because the definition for developing country was not easy to understand. And also some athletes mentioned that this time definition is the past World Championship participant, and they think they are not there when it was happening, and everything is new. So this is the only one point we have to consider for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Aiko. Some good points there. Sophia, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Okay.
Eliane, I think.
It's me, John. Eliane.
Eliane, please go ahead.
I just wanted to think over where to have the Last Chance Regatta. The report talks about Europe, and thinking about how we want to promote more sailing, especially as Ben was commenting on more sailing in America and Oceania. maybe having the thought of having the Last Chance Regatta near the Olympic venue could probably promote making it easier. Like this time, it was a big success, and countries were there hopeful to stay there with their equipment, and that made something very desirable to go to the Last Chance Regatta. So I just wanted to put it out there as food for thought. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I think we should add that into the considerations for the group. Yeah, there's no doubt it's been well acclaimed. It seems to be very successful. The feedback was very good. Michael also outlined, I think we had 14 regattas for qualification this time round, fewer than last time, but it's still a complex business to run it all. Yeah, I think if there are no more comments, I think we've got some good feedback for the working party to take away. Some food for thought, additional considerations. Anything else that anybody wants to say, or anything else that I need to do in order to move this on? No, not seeing anything. Okay, well, that's item 6.2 and 7.2. As I say, feedback's all really helpful. It's non-binding, this discussion, and I look forward to receiving a fully worked up paper from the working parties back in November, and that will be the guidance that we give to our successors in the new events committee at that time. So, but thank you very much to the working parties for the work so far. I think it's been a pretty impressive piece of work and execution, trying to simplify it and get more countries to qualify. So hearing that there's more already qualified than last time is, well, one measure of success. The cost and complexity is still to be worked through. Right, thank you. I think we move on to item 7.1 now, if I've got my agenda in order, which is back over to receive a report. Yes, 7.1 is on world sailing event strategy, and if we could, I think we've had a brief report. Corey, is there anything you'd like to add on the plans for the 26-27 World Sailing Championships?
No, not at this time.
That's fine, thank you, Corey. And Ben, is there anything else you'd like to add as chair of the calendar working party that wasn't already covered in the Q&Q and calendar section? The approach next time round and all of that.
I think the details in the only relevant one to this group is that if the last chance qualifier stays in Europe, which we did discuss pretty extensively, that we wanted to keep the cost down for shipping and travel and thereby keep it in Europe. We didn't think that we could wait as late April and still expect teams to get their equipment to LA in time. So we thought we had to move that time frame a little bit earlier. But other than that, I think it's all well covered.
Okay, thank you. Right. We'll move on to item 8.
John.
Yeah,
sorry, John. One more point is there's a brief mention of how tight the calendar already is, and therefore we're not really sure how a World Cup is going to fit in addition to that. Or maybe in complement to what's already laid out. So I would just highlight how tight the schedule was, is, and how little extra space there is in it for those people who start tackling a Sailing World Cup as an ambition pretty soon.
Yeah, good point, Ben. Yes, well made. And of course, right now we don't know the dates of the 26-27 World Sailing Championships, so that will have some impact on the flexibility of the calendar when those are announced. Okay, I think we've covered that item. Doesn't seem to be anybody else with their hands up. So we'll move on to Regulation 23, item 8. I will ask the board just to sort of update us on the working party that they're planning to set up and the time frame in which they expect that to operate. But just a little bit of background from me. I'll hand over to Marcus. Marcus and I are the joint chairs of the Regulation 23 Working Party, and we did put there is a paper that was sent round with an update for discussion, which outlined that right now, because of the way the regs were updated after COVID and the delayed games in Tokyo, there isn't a requirement to make a change to the 2024 regulations at this mid-year meeting. We've also got, after the last meeting, it looked like we had a proposal, a direction ahead, and we worked that up a little bit more with the other members of the Regulation 23 working party. It's a joint working party between ourselves and the Equipment Committee, and we started to come across a couple of challenges there in terms of the execution of that, and then of resource that was needed to take some elements of that forwards. And combined with that, we then had the governance working party come and say, we want to put this into the new format in policies and regulation. And it became apparent that transferring out of date regulation wasn't a good idea. So the suggestion was that the people with the knowledge and experience took this on, and hence it now sits with the board. I think that's the right way forwards. And I look forward to seeing how that goes. But in the meantime, Marcus had some thinking. Once we paused the Regulation 23 Joint Working Party, we had some thoughts about the way forwards. Marcus and Michael have put together a pathway to consider, and I'm going to hand over to them just to sort of talk us through that pathway. And what we're looking for here again is, is this a useful direction? Does the Events Committee feel? Is it? And then would this be helpful for the board going forwards? So that's kind of where we are. That's the background paper we got, and hopefully that gives you some idea as to why we're where we are. So can I hand over to well, Marcus, would you like to speak first? Your joint chair.
Yeah, thanks, John. What do we at? Yeah, you summarized it pretty well. I think the direction in which we are traveling was to look into creating event equipment combinations that are going to be tested, so that we're not going to the IOC and come with an idea that has not been really tested well in an Olympic environment before. And that require resources that we didn't feel we have at the moment, and that created the challenge, where are we going to test that? The second challenge then was with an unfinished governance reform. Where are we? What goes into policy? What goes into regulation? Who is taking decisions at what time? And then we came to the conclusion it's better to let the governance commission finish their work and then build on that. I think a takeaway in general, the guiding principle that the previous or the current working party was agreeing on is that we need to have a way to test things properly. And that can be done by creating a short list of potential events that we are then putting into World Sailing event properties. And at the moment, the only event property that we really have is the Sailing World Championships and probably the Youth Worlds, where we can test things. But also from the discussion at the annual conference, it was pretty clear that any testing needs to be done with a proper senior fleet, so that we can see how that works in a similar environment. And different ideas to that have been put forward. even going back onto the concept from the regulations from 2012, where we're basically looking at the complete slate for each Olympics. But in the end, where we got stuck was the timeline, how to create these event equipment combinations and not look at it isolated. And what role does the equipment committee play? What role does the event committee play at what point in time? And that in combination with the changed regulations now with a proposal process and the AGM deciding finally on the Olympic events. So that's where we are. Yeah, the rest probably when we come to the submissions, we can discuss a bit more in detail on what ideas make sense.
Okay, thanks, Marcus. Michael, anything you want to add?
I'd probably just to help keep the frame of reference, the decision milestone we have is still 5 years before the games. So the December 5 years before the games is still our timeline to have final decisions taken. As to when we start the process, those sorts of things are obviously at our gift to decide as a sport. But just in terms of the way the application process to the AOC works, the December 5 years before is a pretty hard deadline for us. So that takes the implication that the Olympic Games of that cycle are not concluded before we're having to make a decision. That's probably the key highlight I would make. Everything else, I think, is within our gift to consider the multitude of variables that are there.
Okay. Yeah. I think we're always going to have a slightly different deadline to the IOC. We already have that with quotas as well. So, you know, we work a lot further ahead, being an equipment-based sport, I guess. I'm going to ask either Sarah or Corey if they want to comment on the paper, the pathway to consider, and whether that's helpful. Any observations, and then perhaps outline what the time frame and the process will be to move this on.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, the paper's helpful. Thank you. I think there's some key principles in there that will form the backbone of a new Regulation 23, and I know the Equipment Committee is also looking at it and has some views on it. The new governance does change, you know, the whole submission process and the timeframes around that. The whole point of doing that was to help encourage better decision making by much earlier consultation with our stakeholders and really having the opportunity to consider at the right time, you know, what are the right potential options for our sport going forward, rather than just a bit of a scattergun approach where we get, some will remember, you know, 120 odd different variations on a theme that somehow, you know, we've got to try and work through, even if, you know, 3/4 of them don't meet the basic objectives of our sport. So it will be a much streamlined process for everybody when we get to that new generally applicable governance reform, and we just have to make the decision making for Olympic events fit within that, but also address whatever other specific requirements that we have. And some of the key elements in that regard have been helpfully laid out in the paper. So the board will, if not at this meeting, which has rather a big agenda, certainly at its next or between soon after this coming board meeting, we will look to appoint that working party. It's obviously a key piece of work and we need it to start straight away. And we do need the expertise from a couple of people who've been very close to the detailed drafting in the governance reform to help with that. But I think we're on the right path to improving the decision-making process in this key part of the sport. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So the timelines, as it says there, this needs to be in place by the mid-year meeting next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not even sure whether we might need it sooner, but let me come back to you on that. I was certainly had in my head we wanted to have our process, our new Reg 23 ready for the annual meeting this year. So I think I might stick to that timetable given the history, if we can.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Thanks very much, Sarah. Any other comments or observations from anyone else on the committee regarding Reg 23? Yes, Ben?
Yeah, thanks everyone. The 49er class put in one of the submissions after a request, I guess after the Regulation 23 working party fell apart, to just try and capture some of the chat we'd had in the past and see if we could push things forward a little bit. I was happy to read the report that was then submitted more recently, and it encompasses much of what we proposed. There was a comment from the Constitution Committee that I think is worth highlighting because it's going to require more work to get right. So the proposal we put forward removes the 4-event minimum each time, primarily because of its huge amount of disruption for the events that get put on review, and that's for two reasons. Number one, they get put on review, so people stop, and then number two, our reviews have taken quite a long time in the past. So this all the progress that the events make gets put on hold for quite a long time, and of course, 40% each cycle is a big number. The Constitution Committee said that it's something like it's our legal requirement that we have to review every so often, but actually putting 44 events up for review each time doesn't tackle that legal requirement if it exists, because the same 4 events might get put up every time, thereby not tackling their assertion that each event needs to be up for review at some point. So I think those should be tackled separately. I think it should take a 50% vote to put an event up for review. And then if events haven't been reviewed for something like 4 cycles, maybe they could go for an equipment review to keep up with our legal requirements. But we shouldn't entangle those two concepts, at least not without thinking very hard about how much disruption that takes and if it's really worth it. And then the second piece is that the Sailing World Championships, split in half, now has the opportunity to add events of future Olympic potential into them. And we should treat those selections seriously and have a process for those that's essentially as rigorous as choosing things for the Olympics, because we should be trying to develop extra event properties that can be valuable to sailing, and how we select those events should probably be brought into something like Regulation 23 or a similar process, and on a suitable time frame in the Quad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, good comments, and we'll touch on a little bit more of that. I have to say I read the Constitution Committee comments, which we'll come to shortly when we go through the submissions, and I understood the FRAND requirement was separate to this process and required every after an event had been in the Olympics for 2 cycles or something similar. So I can't remember the regulation number, but anyway, your comments well made and noted. Any other comments before we move to the submissions? Okay, right, thank you. Right, just on to the submissions. I'll just outline the way that we need to do this. It's obviously a more formal process than what we've had. We've got 3 submissions, 2 from the IKA and 1 from the 49er Class Association. So we're fortunate we have the submitters in the room, as it were. And the process is that I will outline the submission, each submission one by one. I'll read the purpose and everything, all of that. I'll then outline the board view and the Constitution Committee view, and then I will ask the originators if there's anything they wish to add. If we want to have a discussion, I need a proposer and a seconder to get it on the floor to open it up for discussion. Once the discussion's finished, we'll go to a vote, and we'll do that through the chat. Just vote, approve, reject, or defer. I think when the originators speak, if they, obviously if they have an opinion as to what they'd like to do in light of the feedback from the board and Constitution, they can advise us of that at the time as well. Right, I hope that's reasonably clear. We'll move on to submission 0924, which is submission from the International Formula Kite Association. And the purpose is to amend the number of events to review from a minimum of 4 to any event that receives a voting majority. We are the reporting committee. The other committees are the Constitution Committee and the board. And in summary, you've got the papers there. Both the board have voted to reject and Constitution have voted to reject with some explanation. So that's the position at the moment. Marcus, you're the originator. Do you want to just say a couple of words on this? Or are you happy to ask me to ask for a proposer and a seconder?
Yeah, thank you. Just very briefly, it's more a conceptual thing. We have been considering to put forward a complete regulation 23 like Ben did, but we thought we should at least try to get some concepts through in case we are amending the dates that are currently in regulation 23. Ben said it already, for events, especially in the current economic and political climate, is causing a lot of disruption. And the question is if the majority of whoever is taking the decision, council, AGM, is not feeling that an event should be reviewed, then it's unlikely that even if the event is put under review, because we have to put a minimum of 4 under review, that in the end anything will change, and we're all wasting a lot of time and energy and money on it. So asking council before, do you actually feel something should change or not, is the idea. In theory, it could review 10 events if there's need for it. But the question is if 4 is the right number. Before it was 2. So that is a more philosophical discussion, and that might well end up in the regulation. But I understand that the board is rejecting it if there's a new working party, which was not clear at that time where it goes. So yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. I probably should have said the difference, and Marcus and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but the difference seems to be 09 is just suggesting that we change from 4, a minimum of 4, to no minimum. 10 is about the voting processes, and 11 from the 49er class is a sort of a redraft to put the current out-of-date Reg 23 as a stopgap to any future Reg 23. Now, so I think we can vote on all 3, but 9 and 11 probably. 11 is a more comprehensive version of 9. So if you want the minimum change, it's 9. If you want a bigger change, it's 11, and the voting one is for you to consider in your as you wish. Hopefully, I've summarised that correctly. Right. Submission 09. Do I have a proposer and a seconder for that? Please just, you have to show it in the chat if you wish to. If I don't get a proposer and a seconder, then we say no opinion to the board, to the council.
I might suggest, John, we just give this a few seconds, knowing there's a bit of a lag for some people. Just see if anything pops up in the chat. I see it. Marcus's hands. No, Marcus's hand down again.
Yeah. Can I just clarify? Can I actually propose and vote on this? I'm not sure if I'm allowed.
That's a good question.
I think it's at the discretion of the chair, because you're sitting around this table as an events committee member, and I have no issue if you wish to. Obviously, you've declared a conflict. If you want to vote, if you want to propose it, fine. If nobody seconds it, it falls.
Okay, thank you. I think it doesn't conflict with any of my conflict. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, I don't seem to have a, if that was a proposer, I don't seem to have a seconder.
No,
So
that was just me listing the submission number. So there's a proposal from Marcus I have in the chat. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second. This is Ben.
funny that. Okay, proposer and a seconder. So it's on the table for anybody who wishes to discuss it before we go to a vote. Anybody wish to say anything in respect to this submission? Yes, Sarah?
Yeah, just to confirm, the board recommendation was reject, as was the Constitution Committee, and obviously, you know, approving this is putting a piece of the puzzle in place, which then, should it go through, would then hamstring really the ability for the new working party to look at this in the context of the whole, if that wasn't clear to anybody. And obviously, you know, number of events under review is a big part of how we go forward. There's a lot of history associated with the number. Those who were around last quad know that you know, there was a lot of talk about limiting the number, and then at the end of the day, council wanted to have all 10, so that when you need big change, which is what we needed to get gender equality, we've got the flexibility. So just a reminder of the context in which this has been presented. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I think that's helpful. I would, you know, at the beginning I did say we now know we don't have to make change in this November, and this, as you say, would hamstring it. So my recommendation to the events committee would be vote which way you will, but either reject or defer. Obviously, I think in the board note it does say these submissions are noted, so they will take them into consideration. If you want to be sure, then defer, and then it'll have to be considered in the future.
So John, if we want to defer, we would need a motion to be proposed and seconded to defer this submission, and that we can do that ahead of formally voting on this submission.
Okay, anybody wish to? Well, we have got a seconder, so we have we can move to a vote unless anybody wishes to propose to defer first. No. Okay, we'll go to a vote. You see you're voting on the motion to accept submission 0924 or reject it. Can
So
you?
if we,
yeah, go for it.
Thanks,
Michael.
John. Yeah, just if people can put in the chat if they accept, reject, or abstain, please, and then we can tally up the votes accordingly. We're looking for 13 votes in the chat because one of the members has left the call. So that between the team of us here, we will count as they come in. I see 6 at the moment. Thank you very much. It will take a moment to come through. 7, 8, 9. We're going to check my maths here. I think as the members could see in the votes there, out of 13 votes, a majority are reject. But please do make sure everyone has voted. I've got 10 votes. If there's, make that 11. Final call for the last 2. Perfect. That's a full house. Thank you very much. That's 13 votes. Now I've got to count them all. I'm saying 3 accept and 10 reject is the way I read that. The team, please do check my maths if I've got that wrong. John, submission 09 is rejected by the events committee.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. Move on to submission 1024 and submission again from the International Formula Kite Class Association to change the principle on how the decisions of reviewing events and equipment is taken and move that power firstly to council. Marcus, do you just want to talk briefly to this, please?
it would go hand in hand with if council doesn't feel there's any need to review it. It would mean that council in the first place is voting on it and not on the recommendation of events committee first. In the end, council is representing the M&As. That's the ones that in the end have to pay for any changes, any new events, etc. So it would be appropriate to ask them or the AGM alternatively, but that would go hand in hand. That's the idea behind it.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. The Constitution Committee has voted to reject this under the same with the same caveats as previously, and likewise the board. Would the board like to say anything else, or no? Okay, so same process again. Do we have a proposer and a seconder?
Marcus proposing, thank you.
Seconder.
I don't see a seconder, John.
Okay. Piotr has.
Piotr, there it goes. Thank you.
Seconded. Okay. With a proposer and a seconder, we open this to the floor for any discussion before we move to a vote. Anybody like to speak to this? Yes, Piotr, please go ahead.
No, thank you, John. I would just like to point out that we have spent some time talking about how important expert committees are in the future, and that the council should only be able to come back to the expert committees and not make the decisions. So I think it's important to note that when such recommendations are made in the future.
Thank you, Piotr. Any other comments before I move to a vote? Yes, Ben.
I think what Piotr says is valuable. I think this one is missing an escape clause, that if we kept going around in a circle, what would happen? So I'm not sure it's got the concept fully nailed, but in general, that's the principle we should be aiming for.
Thank you, Ben. Any other comments? Oh, okay, we're going to move to a vote unless somebody wishes to propose a motion to defer. I think the point's made whichever way this goes. The board has sight of this. So right, no further comments. Then let's move to a vote. Michael.
Thanks, John. We'll just repeat the process, please. If we could have accept, reject, or abstain in the chat, please, to cast your vote on submission 10-24. Again, we're looking for 13 votes, please. Pretty close there. Let me count up. That looks like a full slate of 13 votes. And I see 1 acceptance and 10 rejections. If my team can just confirm that they see the same.
Got the same, yeah.
Yeah. So submission 10-24 is rejected. John?
Thank you, Michael. So we move to MY 1124, submission from the International 49er Class Association. The purpose is to update the approach of selecting Olympic equipment so that World Sailing cultivates Olympic events and events that could be part of a future Olympic Games, thus promoting a broad array of sailing events. Ben, 49er class, would you like to just say a few words to this?
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that the deep state's already weighed in here and it's ultimately not going to pass, but I do think it's useful for this committee to discuss the concept of, do we want to be involved in keeping track of and promoting the events that we want to work on in the future, or leave it to fate or others to sort of provide opportunities for us to diverge in different directions from time to time. I think it's been pretty ad hoc in the past, where difference of concepts have come from and ultimately ended up, and I don't think it's served us very well with the IOC rejecting offshore and us not figuring out mixed single-handed. You know, I think it'd be worthwhile us having the list and working on the list and promoting it, but it would take some staff resource and obviously some work from this committee. So with the obvious end result being a rejection, I'd like to hear, or I think we should all discuss whether we want to do this as part of our work or just leave it as it is.
Thanks, Ben. Any comments to Ben? Yeah, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to say, Ben, look, I'm really hopeful that the new general proposal change to the way in which we make decisions within world sailing does significantly address the issues of the past, which I hope never to be repeated in terms of these decisions. You know, the whole point is that we get these ideas out there. This committee, I mean, they will come to this committee first, effectively, to decide, you know, whether they fit with our strategy, what further information's needed, whether they fit with our overarching requirements to ensure that we stay a strong Olympic sport, whether they meet any new requirements of the IOC, which, as we know, do tend to change. And we have open and transparent debate well in advance of change and decisions. So I think, again, that's part of why we need to fit this new Regulation 23 within that new decision-making framework that will apply across our organisation. So I know anyone who's been around for a little while feels very scarred by past processes, but we're very hopeful that the new way in which we will do things with the new regulations will help address a lot of those issues.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I do hope so too, and I think I can't think of anyone who'd less like to have to work out what mixed single-handed is in the future than yourself. That wasn't fun, was it? Any other comments or feedback for Ben? Okay, well, we've already heard that the board vote to suggest we reject this. Constitution Committee suggests we reject this, and for a couple of reasons to do with policy versus regulation, which Sarah's outlined will change anyway in the new governance model, and some definitions that were missing. But I thought it was a really interesting proposal. So do we have a proposer and a seconder for this? Oh, Marcus proposing. And Ben seconding. Okay. Any discussion from anybody else? If not, I'll wait a second or two for the time lag, but if not, we'll pass to Michael to take us through the vote. Oh, Marcus, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to keep it short. I think in the whole concept and what Ben has written down in the end is reflecting what we have been discussing in the working party, and also after we decided to pause it between in the smaller group. I think it is critical that we are looking at the events and are actually going to test them, and that requires some thinking about what is a long list, what is a short list, and who is evaluating these lists at what point in time from an events point of view and from equipment. And even if the outcome of this vote should be pretty clear, I really hope that we are not going forward in the future and trying to put things forward that haven't been properly tested. That was the base concept of all the discussions we had over the last 6 years that we're trying to do Regulation 23, I think. And that we're not ending up with 100 proposals and we're not going to test them and just pick in the end. So if something at least comes through from that would be great.
Thanks, Marcus. Any other comments? And just a comment from me as someone who's also been on the Reg 23 Working Party for 6 or 7 years. I bear those scars. Yeah, I think we actually have. It is moving forwards, and there are some great concepts in here. So whatever the outcome, I know that the board has seen and will take this on board, and I imagine some of us around this in this room will be involved in the future process as well. So hopefully we can keep it alive. But the concept of putting forward tried and tested events and equipment just makes sense for a sensible governing body to me. Okay, we've had a proposal, we've got a seconder. We move to the vote. Michael?
Thanks, John. We'll do it again, folks, to accept, reject or abstain, please. And we're still looking for 13 votes. I think that's 11 votes, 12 votes, 13 votes. Thank you very much. And I see 4 acceptance. If I can count right, no, maybe only 3.
Yeah, just 3 there.
Just 3 there, yeah, making 10 rejections. So submission 11, John, is rejected.
Okay, thank you, Michael, and thank you to the submitters. I think you did really want to make sure that there was something in place in the event of a Regulation 23 Working Party submission not materialising, which it didn't. So I do thank you for the work and diligence, and hope your comments are taken forwards. Okay, that concludes item 8, and we now move on to the reports from various working parties and subcommittees. And we're straight into item 9, the rankings. And we're going to receive a report from the Rankings Working Party that was circulated previously, and I'll ask Graham to speak in a moment. There is a recommendation for us for a decision to the board, but there's also some comments from the staff which add some additional requirements to the list going forwards. Without saying any more, Graham, may I pass over to you?
Yeah, thank you, John. I'll keep this relatively brief, and I'm sure either Matt or Michael will add some additional context to it as shared in the report. But in general, there has been no further work from the Rankings Working Party. This is largely in part due to not having additional funding approved in order to move forward on the previously approved new ranking system. If you all recall, about a year ago, we did work through the quote process and had made some significant progress in determining the necessary next steps, but have just fallen short of achieving those without the necessary funding. I do recognize the World Sailing's financial position a year ago was not helpful to this cause, but certainly hope that some more can happen. Certainly want to give a big shout out to Matt, who's been keeping the rankings going on the background. On a positive side, we are seeing all the Olympic classes pushing through all their results in the XRR format, which is extremely helpful to know that when we do turn on this new ranking system, we know things are in place and they're working well. And Matt was also sharing that some of our non-Olympic classes are also starting to send ranking results in through the XRR as well, which is very helpful. So we'll let the staff maybe provide a little update here, and then we'll get to the recommendation side of things if that works for you.
Yeah, sure. Matt, do you want to say a few words to the staff update, or is Michael going to do that?
Thank you, John. No, I don't think I've really got anything more to offer other than my thanks again to the Olympic classes for being on board with this and their help through the whole process. There is a lot ahead of us, a lot we can still improve, but until we get the funding behind us and the support, then I will do my best to keep everything going and heading in the right direction.
Thanks very much. Yeah, keep up the good work. But could you just tell us what are the resource requirements for the additional development requests, or how will they benefit? Will they free up your time to do other work, or what's the feeling behind them? I'm no techie, so calendar upgrade, XRR builder.
I'm no techie either, I'm afraid, but there are Michael's definitely the lead on that. But yeah, there are a lot of add-on tools that we could do to make things a lot easier. Everything at the moment is done through email, really. It's all very manual, all these processes. So yeah, any of these projects that we've researched, we've got quotes for, anything that we can go ahead would be hugely beneficial.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Anybody, any questions for either Graham or Matt? Any sailors out there that want to, say, how useful is this, or anyone from M&As? Okay. Well, what I think I'd like to do, because I know we've got some more requests to do with rankings from both team and match racing coming up. I think we should, we recognise the board's been under constraints, and Graham made that point well. We just want to keep these live and on a list that we can pass to the board. So we'll roll them all up into one recommendation to the board for the resource, if that makes sense. Does that work for you, Michael? Does that fulfil our obligation here?
Certainly from a process perspective, that's convenient, assuming that the rest of the committee members agree with that we can take all those recommendations asking for resource development on the various rankings and calendar pieces together. But I see Graham's hand.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, of course, we've still got to get approval from the committee for this and the subsequent request, but we'll do that in due course. Yes, Graham, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit more on this quote that we're sort of recommending to the board to approve. That would be to engage with someone like Sodic, our IT provider, to go ahead and start to implement the sort of the coding updates and updating the algorithms that we need to be able to help automate the ranking system, as well as being able to plug those into the website appropriately. This is a relatively small quote for the type of work that they're doing. It could have been a lot more if we were looking at other providers, but I think Sotic have provided a pretty reasonable quote for the work that they've are able to do for us. So just a reminder to everyone that that's what this funding would be for.
Thanks, Graham. Any other comments? Okay, Piotr, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to voice my huge support to the whole working party and all of the work, and I hope that the funding will be there. We'll be going through the youth events subcommittee proposals, and one of the proposals there just calls out for a ranking. So I'm sure it will benefit the whole of sailing in the future if it happens, when it happens. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Piotr. Yes, when it happens. Okay, well, if there are no further comments to this, then I'll ask if anybody doesn't want to endorse the recommendations in this paper with the recommendation 2.1 and the development request on 1.6 on the general update from the staff. Please just let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I will assume that is supported, and we'll make that recommendation to the board. Okay. That deals with item 9. I'll move straight on to item 10, the Youth Events Subcommittee, and we're going to hear from Charles shortly. Oh, just before I do, I forgot to say big thanks to Graham, the Working Party, and Matt and the staff for all the work they do on the rankings. Item 10, the Youth Events Subcommittee. We received a report today, a PowerPoint presentation, and then a strategy paper. And I make it that we've basically got, we're going to have a review of Buzios, preview of Garda, look at 2025 and beyond, a bit of a Youth Olympic Games update, and the future event strategy, which is a fairly key piece of work, and hopefully will generate discussion from all of us to feedback and guide the Youth Events Subcommittee. But I hope we're going to get some agreement and progress on these areas in the next session. Right, Charles, can I hand over to you? You're very welcome. Good evening.
Great, thank you, and thank you for including us in your meeting. So yeah, we will run through things in the order that you suggested. So I'm going to hand straight over to, I'm not sure whether it's Pedro or Michael, apologies for that, just to run through those first couple of items. So report on Buzios, Garda update, 25 update, and then yeah, a couple of issues around the Youth Olympic Games where we've of course been tasked to outline how we move forward with events depending on the IOC decision in June. So I'll hand the floor to Pedro or Michael just to run through those updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. While Pedro joins us there, I'll just quickly put this on the screen. Pedro, you can jump through a couple of highlights.
Yes, so I was asked not to repeat what the report is presenting. Basically, from Buzios, yeah, we had some challenges, but a very successful event at the end. We tested some new strategies on having only 3 racing areas, and we now know how it is to run an event with 3 racing areas only. Unless there is any specific questions or clarifications, I think we can move on. Special thanks for Walter, which is also a member of this committee. I hope this is a fair overview of the event in Buzios. Moving on Garda, July. We have already confirmed actually 74 countries, one more country that was confirmed today. Record number, I would say. I think the record is 75 in Malaysia 10 years ago. We are back on quite record numbers of participation. The event will be run in 5 racing areas through the north of Garda Lake, and the organizing committee is on top of things, and it looks good, unless there is any questions. We'll move on. Oh, there is a question. David?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm just interested in looking at participation numbers. 74 countries, probably still not bad, but not as good as we would hope, I would imagine. And maybe this is a question for Marcus and Ben, but female kiteboarding 9, male kiteboarding 13, mixed multi-hull 12. We know what the challenges are in those areas in our part of the world, but I'd just be interested in why we're seeing so small numbers in that regard. If we're thinking these are pathways into the Olympic Games, then potentially we've got a problem.
Marcus or Ben, do you want to respond?
Well, I can say for kiteboarding, it doesn't help that 5 under-19s are going to the Olympics. So it's bad timing with the Youth Worlds.
Yeah, we saw the same though in 23 numbers were still way down on that too.
I don't have any formal involvement with the NACRA 15, so I don't have anything too useful to say. But I have been told the numbers are up for their open event, so I don't know if there's a conflict or if it's just the reality of relatively expensive equipment.
I mean, I think it's if it's okay, John, I'd like to comment on that because we've been analysing not just the overall M&A participation, but as part of the strategic review, but also, yes, looking at individual events within the championship. And I would say that those two and one other in particular are quite consistently falling short, certainly on the last 3 years detailed data that we have in front of us. And I think that they have to form part of the review that we're going to be carrying on with over the coming months for sure.
Thanks, Charles.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, David. Any other questions? I'll pass back to Pedro.
Yeah, just to report that the bid process for 2025 has come to an end with the proposal submitted to the board for approval soon. And the venue for 2025 should be announced soon, subject to contractual arrangements, of course. I think there is a question from Fiona. Or
yeah, hi, yeah, hi. It's not really a question. It's really just a comment. Is a point of information is that on the ENP program, which is a very big part of the Youth Worlds, this year we received 80 applicants, and which was, I think, one of our record years of applicants, and we will be having 30. 20 in the ILCA, 6 and 10 in the kite. The IQ foil participating in the Youth Olympic Games. So, we continue to get a lot of interest in this, and we will be reviewing the program after this event to see what we can do in the next quad, if there's things that we can do differently. So, as far as we're concerned, it's a success, but there's always ways we can improve it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Fiona. You carrying on, Pedro?
Michael, do you want to lead on this one?
Sure, can do. So as members will be aware, some years ago, the Youth Olympic Games were postponed by the IOC. They are now in October 2026 in Senegal, in the host city of Dakar. The IOC originally asked for slate proposals. World Sailing pushed forward for 6 medals and an increased quota. The IOC then underwent a review and advised us that that would not be occurring, that the numbers would not be going up. So we have revised that down, as you recall, at our decisions last year, to 4 events that we have proposed to the IOC now: a male and female windsurfing event and a male and female board event, with an athlete quota of approximately 100. The IOC are due to make their decision on the number of sports and the number of medals and the number of athletes in the middle of the year, just ahead of the Paris Games, probably June. Apologies, that was cut off on the report there. It's poor formatting on my part. So at this point in time, we do not know what events and what quota we have. So that the request to the events committee at the moment is just to help us get in front of the timeline, so that once we hear from the IOC on the final slate, we are in a position to go to tender very quickly to secure the equipment for those events that we end up receiving. So for now, we're assuming we have 4 events, but to be clear, that is a decision that is not taken yet, but we are planning for that. And as you can see, the Youth Events Subcommittee is recommending some guidelines for the tender. Now, this is not binding or mandatory. This is a guideline to help manufacturers understand where the Youth Events Subcommittee thinks we should be going for Dakar 2026. Some more context, there will be a much smaller sport program in Dakar 2026 compared to previous Youth Olympic Games. It is a challenging environment to deliver in, and simplicity for sports will be key. I wouldn't be surprised to see a number of major sports not on the program, just due to the fact that the infrastructure and the resources to deliver are not present. So I think in sailing's interest to have a simple program, which we as World Sailing can expect to deliver. We know that we have a Senegalese M&A who is quite small, and to expect them to deliver a complex program would be most unfair on them, and I think make it very hard for the IOC to select us. So that the context that the Youth Events Subcommittee is making their recommendations to you here is for a simple, easy to deliver regatta that World Sailing does the funding and the work to deliver for. And obviously we don't have staff on the ground and these sorts of things. So that the guidelines they put for are for the windsurfing event, they're suggesting non-foiling equipment. That is not to say that those manufacturers who wish to propose foiling equipment would be automatically rejected, but their preference is for non-foiling. For the board event, the Youth Events Subcommittee is putting a guideline out there that they're looking for wing equipment that would be foiling, as they feel this is the simplest way for both athletes and organisers to deliver in what is going to be a relatively short time period in October 26. So John, that's the outline in the background to the recommendation for the events committee to consider.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Just is this going to be a bring your own equipment, or would this be supplied? What's the intent?
The intent here that this is supplied equipment. So that the goal here is to ask manufacturers for equipment that meets these guidelines, and to be able to have that process concluded by annual conference, so that the Youth Events Subcommittee and thus the Events Committee can see those proposals for supplied equipment and consider if they're suitable or not. In the unfortunate scenario we don't get any manufacturers, then bring your own would be on the table. But for legacy and operational purposes, I think the objective would be supplied equipment.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Any comments or questions from Events Committee before we take this to a vote? Marcus?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused because when I recall correctly from Malaga, this is pretty much the opposite has been discussed and widely supported in Malaga. For the windsurfing, if I recall that correctly, I think there was pretty much no discussion about it. It should be IQ foil from a lot of aspects, from M&A pathways and support, etc. And for the other event, if it then happens, I'm a bit concerned, following a little bit the discussion on the Regulation 23, not to put things in front of the IOC that we haven't tested before. And again, I'm running both kiteboarding and wing foiling, so I don't really care in that sense. But bringing equipment that we don't even know if it works in the wind conditions that we have there, there's a big risk of failure and looking stupid in front of the IOC. And in terms of participation, we are running this now for 2 years. We have 5 girls under 19 in in the world rankings in the last 2 years. 4 of them are from Europe. So I'm not sure where this happened, this move.
Charles or Michael, do you want to respond?
Yes, I'm certainly happy to put some comments in there, and I'm sure Michael will as well. I think it's fair to say that the mood and the messaging from the IOC since the Malaga conference has shifted significantly, and there's no doubt their mood and what they're saying has caused us to step back from the conversations we were having in Malaga. And I think the guiding principles for us now are simple, safe, and durable. And those were certainly the 3 key words that we kept focusing on in our discussions. And I think that's certainly guiding the windsurfing. I think with the wing, clearly there is an opportunity for that to be challenged. And I hear what you're saying about the world rankings, but the reality is that aside from that, winging participation, correct me if I'm wrong, and you know far better than I do, is growing at such a rate of knots. There is a real opportunity here for a meaningful legacy. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. I'll just go straight to Ben.
Yeah, thanks. I think based on what we've heard from Michael and thereby the IOC, we should just stick to IQ Foil Youth. If they give us 4 events, let's just do 2 formats for each of the men and the women, keep the same equipment. You know, everything I've seen is that the youth are excited about foiling, and the equipment already works pretty widely, and we're already using it for our own youth worlds, and thereby that's the simple and durable solution, not coming up with some new equipment that we have to get our hands on and trying some new event out. Let's just repeat what we do for the youth worlds in a new place and excite the youth that way.
Thank you, Ben. Michael, what's the well, the timelines are June, is it, when we'll know from the IOC what we've actually got?
The understanding we have at the moment is there's an executive board of the IOC will have their meeting in June, and that's when we understand this decision will be taken. So thereafter, we would expect to hear, and we're just trying to be prepared. So to signal to manufacturers now who might be interested in supplying the equipment, where we think things are going and what we're looking for, to give them some time, because between June, July, when the decision is made and when we need to make our decisions at annual conference, there is not a lot of time to run a bid process, to run an evaluation process and make some recommendations. So that the further we can get in front of that right now is the better. And that's the goal for today, is just to set some direction. So when we have the IOC decisions, we know what our next move is.
Okay, and just before I pass to Piotr, just Charles, I think I heard you say either that one of the reasons for going non-foiling on the windsurfing was the venue itself and the legacy of being able to leave that equipment there, whereas the foiling equipment wouldn't be so durable. But I may have misheard that. But why foiling kite then? Wing foiling rather, because that's it's got the same issue.
Sure. I don't know whether, Michael, you want to pick up on that from our meeting last week.
I suppose on the venue infrastructure side, we have been through a site visit once. It would be a shared venue. It's quite a small beach with a very shallow pitch, so that launching large fleets there is possible, but not ideal. The other piece that we see is very low wind limits forecast at this time of year in October in that region. So that light wind is one of the elements, but certainly just space on the beach and even the ability to get trucks into the site, for example, and take containers in is heavily constrained. So we're looking for something that's very easy to move. And as I said, that anything that we can go to the IOC with and say we can leave behind a legacy And the bigger the legacy is, the better chance our sport has to being selected and the slate has to being approved as per our request.
Okay, thank you. Piotr?
Sorry. Before Marcus talks about light wind and wing, I would just like to ask about the quotas for both the windsurfing and the wing. What are we looking for? What is the dream quotas here?
Approximately 25 per male and female in windsurfing, and the same in board was our request. I wouldn't want to hesitate to guess what the ASC final decision would be on that, but effectively we asked for 100 athletes.
Okay, and split evenly.
Yes,
between board. Okay,
that was our original request. But it's not a final decision. The ASC will come to us with a total athlete quota that World Sailing would then be responsible to allocate across the events that are approved. So we could adjust that if we chose to have it unbalanced across the events, but I would not recommend it be unbalanced across the genders.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Piotr. Marcus, you have already spoken. I don't want to spend much longer on this item. I'll take to a vote very soon. And obviously, if it doesn't get support, then back to Youth Events Subcommittee to rethink. But Marcus, have you got another brief comment that might clarify things? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm really. Michael just said the wind conditions are going to be light, and so I have to ask, really, wing, is that a good idea to put something in front of the IOC that most likely will not work? I'm really with Ben there. We should do IQ foil and that's it, and play it safe, and at least nothing can go wrong. We will have enough challenges in that venue with anything that we're trying. So why take any risk?
Thanks, Marcus. Charles, do you want to have any final word before I put this to your recommendation to a vote? Any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think all I would say is that we had a comprehensive discussion amongst the committee, including one of our vice presidents, and I think we were all quite clear on the direction of travel. So no, I've got nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charles. Right, I think we've obviously got some concerns from some members of this committee, but I'd like to put it to a vote. We'll do it on the chat. I think, Michael, if that's all right. Those people who support the proposal from the Youth Events Subcommittee for the event equipment tender guidelines to be as listed, please vote yes. Those who don't.
John, can I perhaps suggest?
Yep.
Reading the room here that we split and we do a vote on the windsurfing and a vote on the board.
That's good.
Just to give a direction of travel, because those 4 events are what we've applied for, so that this is what we need to prepare for, so that if there is support for one and not the other, that would be good, I think, for the subcommittee to hear.
So vote for the male and female windsurfing, not foiling, as written. If you support that, vote yes. If you don't support that, vote no. If you could type that in the chat now, that would be great.
Just a reminder, we are looking for 13 votes. Perfect. That's 13 votes. Counting. I'm counting 7 votes for and 6 votes against. If my team can confirm that, please.
Yeah, Michael, I can see 7 for. That's
Yeah.
7 in support.
So the male and female windsurfing equipment guidelines to 7 votes to 6 in support of not foiling. But just as a reminder to the group, this is not a decision on the equipment. That will come in the annual conference. This is a guide to the tender document. So tenders for all types of equipment can still be received. If we can then move to the second part, which I will put in the chat now for the male and female board equipment. As you can see, the recommendation is a foiling wing. We can do the same process, please. A yes, no, or pass. I only counted 11 votes, 12 votes. We're just looking for one more, I think. Thank you all. That's everyone's vote in. I've got 1, 2, 3. I count 3 votes for and 10 votes against foiling wing for the male and female board equipment. Does that match, Matt?
I agree with you there. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So the recommendation there by the events committee is declined. I think then we open ourselves to the question of next steps. The youth events subcommittee can either come back to this group or do an email vote on a new recommendation, or they can keep the criteria open and just leave it unspecified on any of these specific details and see what the market forces provide as we come back. But I'll let the committee consider that. We don't need to make that decision on the spot at the moment.
Okay, that sounds. Charles, are you happy with that? Well, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine. I think all I would say is that we will obviously be governed by a proposal that went to the IOC, which specified either men's kite and wing or wing and women's kite or wing. So that's currently what sits in front of the IOC, and that is the slate as it's been approved by them. So I would just simply say that we would be working within those guides. I think I'm right in saying, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, noted. Right, we're going to move on to I think the next one is the future event strategy, Charles. And
Sure.
Again, this is something that you're looking for a decision from events committee, and you have a number of proposals, and well, hopefully we'll have a canter through and see if we can take them all together or if we need to divide them out. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. So obviously the background and work over the past couple of years in particular is pretty well documented and has been presented as we've worked through all of our thinking and so on. Updated slides came to all of you a couple of weeks ago, and of course we discussed that together a week or so ago. So you could see the direction of thought and the key issues that were guiding us towards what is now rendered into the 4 proposals that you have in front of you. Apologies for their late arrival. They really did just need to go back through Youth Events Subcommittee again last week. So I'll not go through the overview because, as I said, that's all pretty well documented and well discussed. And these 4 proposals all fall out of the main slide that I presented to you a week or so ago. So I'm happy, John, to either take each proposal individually or to throw it open, whichever you'd rather.
Well, I'm happy to throw it open and for people to ask about each of the proposals that they wish to do. Yeah, it's I mean, it's really nice to see a long-term piece of strategic thinking come to a head with some concrete proposals. I'm sure people have different views, and we've already heard one of the challenges might be the calendar, but you know, let's have a short discussion on it, but then we really do need to move to a vote because this needs to be enacted quite quickly hereafter. So
John, if I could perhaps, if we could just do
Michael.
a proposer and seconder to take these proposals formally onto the table so we can vote for them. That would just help us in formalities.
What, each proposal?
I would suggest we bring all on to the table as a block so we can discuss the whole paper.
Yeah. Okay. If you think we need to do that, then yes. Do I have a proposer for the paper, for the proposals in the paper? David, propose, seconder.
Thank you, Ben. Just to clarify, proposed from David, and we've got a seconder from Ben.
Both. Okay, so we're now happy to open this up to the floor for a discussion. You can either have a general discussion, or if you want to pick up specific proposals, please just work through Charles to do the feedback, and I'll hand over to Charles to take us through that.
Great, thank you. So Ben, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, I've got questions on 2 of the elements. First, splitting the championship. I think I understand the reasons why you might have got there, since we obviously went the same way on a sailing world champion on the main sailing world championship. But I worry about the burden on the staff. I'm not sure if it's the same staff members that have to lead this, or if there's a parallel set of staff. But I wondered how much you debated cutting down the slate of the current championship versus splitting into 2. That's number 1, and I'll just jump into the second one. And on the second one, on the various options for filling quotas, do you want us to discuss all the various ones, or are you happy for us just to say, yeah, we support filling it?
By all means. Well, shall we deal with that one first? So as far as the staff is concerned, and splitting, I mean, I think the 2 key benefits of splitting are, without doubt, this would open the championship up to a whole host of hosts that otherwise wouldn't be able to consider hosting this championship. And secondly, it clearly creates this opportunity for a potential second medal, or indeed multiple entries, however that might be ultimately delivered. So I think those are the 2 primary benefits. I think from a staffing perspective, we have discussed that, although it's perhaps not for me to directly answer it. But I've certainly been satisfied that by splitting the event, it doesn't simply double the workload, because you would, although you're creating an opportunity for an increased quota at each of the events, you wouldn't be creating something of equal scale times 2. So it wouldn't be a doubling of resourcing. And certainly Michael and Pedro have contributed, of course, comprehensively into that discussion. Was there something else, Ben, at this stage, or do we go to Piotr?
I guess can you just clarify how you want us to address proposal 2? Like, personally, I support filling up the quota. I guess I don't really care which way you do it, but are you asking us to choose an option, or you just want us to just say go for it?
No, I think at this stage, I think the key thing is to fulfill available quota, and then for us to work through which of the options is most likely to deliver the most workable, sensible result. So no, I don't think we're looking to pin it down to a specific option tonight. Piotr?
Yes, thank you. For proposal 2, did you took 2 questions for proposal 2. Did you consider using the World Sailing rankings to fulfill the quota? And the second question is for proposal 2, option 2, and the word, and it says class world championship and or a medalist of the continental championships. Now, it's a question about how you consider the continental championships, because especially at this level of sailing, they're not equal quality, all of the continental championships. I would say a mixed success is the right word.
Sure.
So maybe without the or would be safer, or just use the World Championships.
Sure. So I think option 2 at the moment is really expressing the principle of using rankings, and the specific rankings to be used or proposed to be used are what will come through in this next phase of work. So option 2 is really around the principle of using rankings, and then we would move to which rankings would be most reliable and most suitable. David?
Thank you. I just have a couple of points. Firstly, around staff demands. I think one of the principles we've been trying to aim for is to go to quality venues with capable people on the ground. So if we really believe in that, there should be less demand on World Sailing staff to help deliver these events, and I think from everyone's perspective, that's a really good thing. Ben, to your point in reducing events, I think yes, I think that is something that is up for consideration. And if we look at entries for kiting and for NACRA 15 in the youth worlds, we would have to potentially look at why we would continue with those events at the moment. But again, having flexibility around equipment, maybe we look at being more agile and replacing those events with something that's growing more so, and we've talked about winging in the past. Around the rankings, I think it's a great idea, but we need the rankings to be accurate. And going back to the work that's been done previously, I don't think we're in a position to be able to use rankings accurately at the moment, and nations' needs will all be different as well. So I think we just have to keep the communications open in that regard, but certainly accept them as we improve on our ability to track those sorts of things. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Hi, Eliane.
Yes, I'm curious about the philosophy behind filling the quota, because you're trying to maximize the participation and the opportunity. But I think we have to think about equity and diversity, because it would actually get a problem with probably some participants. Imagine there's 2 of one country fighting for 1 of another country for first place. That wouldn't be fair. And I think we have to think about increasing participation of the countries that are not able to go, and not increasing the gap of the countries that have the resources to have these youth teams. So I wonder if increasing the participation actually helps the final outcome, or it hurts the final outcome. I'm curious.
Sure. I think something we're very conscious of is that it doesn't become something of an arms race where the wealthiest and best resourced nations have the highest number of entries and in essence team race other competitors out of an event. And I think we're very conscious of that. I think it's really important to think about another part of this proposal, which is the 3-year venue agreement. And part of the thinking around that is very much linked to a long-term legacy, and we see as being directly tied to the evolved World Sailing Development Strategy. So rather than being this whole strategic direction being to prejudice emerging nations, I would say that some really key elements of this strategy are actually very much about increasing participation, increasing skill resourcing in and around volunteering, race management, and so on. So at the very heart of this, I would say it's about encouraging wider participation rather than discouraging it, and absolutely not positioning it to benefit the wealthier and better resourced M&As, but at the same time not putting up a barrier to people dropping away from the sport too early. Hi, is your hand, David, a legacy hand or a fresh hand?
Can we? Yeah, can David's already spoken, so can we go to Aiko?
Hi, Aiko.
Yes, one thing I want to mention is that the sailors at this level, age, they are very busy with their education as well as sailing, and making the selection complicated is not helping them. We're not European nations, which is not easy to do qualifier or anything apart from the World Championships, and national selection is the only one who is deciding at the moment. And this simplicity, I would hope to keep it. Just think about the education of their age. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Just to say that qualification is not a part of this thinking in any way at all. That thought has been discarded. So there will be no additional events to put into the calendar, and that's something we were very conscious of from a cost perspective, a welfare perspective in particular.
Okay, I'm conscious of time. We've had a number of comments, which are great, but I think we need to. I'd like to move this forward if there are no final comments. Personally, I think this is a great step forward, and I think fixing the having a 3-year agreement lends itself to all sorts of small emerging nations and training camps and what have you. So I think it's got real potential. The first 3 proposals make absolute sense to me. The final proposal, I think it's right that we try and see if it could be a headline regatta, but that might be more of a challenge. But anyway, I think we need to move to a vote on this. Michael, do you? What's your guidance? Do I need to vote on? Do we need to vote on each proposal, or can we? I'd rather take them on block if we can, in the interest of time. If anybody wishes to disagree, they can speak now. Does that work for you, Michael?
Process-wise, I'm happy with these. I see a couple of people raising some questions.
All right, not.
But Ben, did you have a hand up on the process here?
It was actually kind of a question for Charles, is if the splitting of the events would be like the plan for every year or an option. Like I really worry about year 3 between July and September. You know, there's a test event to run, there's a Pan Am Games to run, there's a Sailing World Championship to run, and then to throw a Youth Worlds in that slot seems like a big burden. But you know, so is it an all or nothing, or is it, you know, pick and choose?
Yeah, so I think where we've got to at the moment is that the devil will be in the detail, and the way in which the bid proposals will be written would enable somebody to be able to to bid for both. Are you meaning split when you're the way that you're expressing it? In other words, a July event and a December event?
Yeah, and I mean across the quad. So like, I think in some years it's perfectly acceptable to split, and in others it's more of a challenge.
Sure. I think that, Michael, is something we'd need to just consider as we write the bid proposal, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think this is where it will come back to the decision-making process, that we allow all options to come on the table with the bid, and then we can make a decision for the exact cycle that we're in and the calendar we have and the circumstances we have.
Sure.
As suggested in the chat there, I see a couple of people have got different comments on the different proposals. So John, I'm thinking it's probably worth doing each proposal one by one, or each proposal has been already proposed and seconded, so the 4 of them are on the table. We can just quickly run 4 votes, if you're happy with that, John, to go through each one.
Well, I think if I just feel that 1, 2, and 3 are kind of, well, they overlap each other, and the thing falls down if you don't do those. So I would push to run proposal 1, 2, and 3 together, and then vote on proposal 4 separately. I'm happy with that. If people want to, if the people don't like the direction, please vote against it. If they do, vote for it.
Fair enough. So to confirm, then we'll do a vote now on proposal 1, 2, and 3 together. I'll just put this in the chat.
Okay. Would it be acceptable, John, to make a suggestion there?
Yeah.
Might I suggest, and apologies if this is the wrong thing to do, that we take, because I think 1 and 2 are inextricably linked. They are very closely linked, because the splitting opens up the quota top-up option, so they really are tied together. So if it was acceptable to you, I think 1 and 2 run very successfully together, and then I think 3 and 4 probably are separate items. I think it would be a shame to see 3 go in the wrong direction because of some feelings about 1 and 2. Thank you.
That's yeah, and I'm really happy with that. I think yeah, you're right. So Michael, can we do 1 and 2 together, and then 3
Certainly.
and 4? 3 votes in total.
Yeah, so the first vote is for proposal 1 and 2, as you could see in the chat. So if we can just have a for, against, or abstain, please, for proposal 1 and proposal 2 as a combined block. My understanding is we're still looking for 13 votes. Got my maths here. I'm counting 13 votes, and I'm counting 5 for and 8 against, a combination of proposal 1 and proposal 2. Does that match what you see, Matt?
That matches me, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So then this proposal 1 and 2 rejected. Proposal 3 then will be our next vote. Stand alone for proposal 3. So if we can have the same process, please. Vote for, against, or abstain on proposal 3. So I've got 13 votes there. I count 12 in favour and 1 against proposal 3. Is that match,
Correct.
Matt?
Correct, yeah.
Perfect. And then so moving to the final one, proposal number 4, please. Same process, 4 against or abstain, proposal number 4. I'm counting 13 votes for proposal 4, so that is 12 votes for, 1 against. Is that match, Matt?
That is correct. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Matt. So, John, that concludes the 4 proposals on the table.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Thanks, Matt. Well, Charles, you have an answer. I'm sure that's not quite what you were hoping for, but some of that's found favour. I guess you have to go back to the Youth Events Subcommittee and consider those elements again. But thank you very much. I think it's progress anyway. I think the idea of a 3-year venue is great, and if we can get a commercial investment, fantastic. But we'll see how that goes.
Sure. Thank you for your input and guidance. Thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes the Youth Events Subcommittee. But so just a really big thank you to Charles, to you, and all the group that do huge amount of work on behalf of young sailors in our sport. And it's unfortunately we haven't progressed this just quite as far as we'd like to have done, but it is moving forward. So keep up the good work, and I'll speak again soon. Right, I'm very conscious of time. Looks like we're going to run over time. We are onto the match race subcommittee, followed by team race, any other business, and I did suspect we might be running short on time. So Michael Rollich has kindly sent us in a report as the chair of the match race subcommittee. It's got a huge amount of content in there, and we thank you, Michael, for your report and the work of your committee. What we're going to do is to note the report, and we're just going to pull out the recommendations. You have 2 recommendations in your report, and if approved, we'll add them to the list of ranking recommendations we've already been building up. Now, I think these are recommendations that have been made before, so I don't propose to go to a vote. If anybody doesn't wish to support both the recommendations in the paper, please say so in the chat, and then we can have a discussion. Otherwise, we'll just assume acceptance and then note the rest of the report. Okay, I'm not noticing any dissent there. So thank you, and again, apologies, Michael, to you for not being able to give you more time. We'll put that right in November. And likewise, the team racing subcommittee, again, a lot of work been going on there, and some developments in the report that Fiona Kidd, as the chair, has put forwards to us, and further work going on the rankings. And there is a request in there for the Team Racing microsite to be recreated within the World Sailing Platform. Again, something that was mentioned in the match racing. Are there any comments or questions to Fiona on her report or the request for some help? If you have any questions or comments, please speak now. Okay, All right, no comments there. So Fiona, please be assured we'll pull out the recommendations from the rankings and the microsite and add them to the list of rankings and microsite requests to Match Racing, as well as your own and the Olympic rankings too. Thank you very much. That takes okay. Thanks. That takes us through the rankings. I am sorry we're running out of time to spend more time on those, but I have one item of any other business which I mentioned at the beginning. It's an item on the equipment committee agenda to do with the request from the IQ Foil Class Association to reduce the sail sizes. And I'm going to just hand over to Michael for the technical input on that, and then I'll go around the room and see if anybody else has got any other business they'd like to raise. Michael?
Thanks, John. I thought it was just worth bringing to this committee's attention this change. There's a number of other class changes the equipment committee will consider tomorrow for Olympic classes, but just to note its impact here, as we've discussed format for this equipment a number of times, and obviously we've seen athlete health as the primary driver for the class's recommendation, and I'm sure this group would endorse that. But I think it's worth this group noting the potential, and the conversations have been had around on the wind range that this equipment can perform in as part of the format, and as we know, particularly for the next two quads where lighter winds are anticipated in those venues. The class have responded to the equipment committee's request with some technical information that they believe they can still deliver the racing and those lower wind limits. And I think it would be a good move for this committee, if they agree with that, to remind the equipment committee of our objectives to be able to race in 5 to 6 knots of wind, and to ensure that the equipment selected for the windsurfing events does enable that, so that as they're considering this change to the sail sizes, that they keep that objective of the events committee and this event in mind when they do it. Certainly the class policies, race management policies and so on do align with that objective, but I think it would be prudent for this committee just to be aware of that, and if they've felt necessary to cast an opinion on it. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Michael. So if anybody's not happy with us continuing to press for the IQ Foil to be able to race in 5 knots, please speak now. I think we're all aligned with the objective of trying to reduce the upper weight range of the sailors. So the move is in the right direction, but we don't want to knock off the bottom end sailing ability, racing ability. If anybody has any objections to that, please indicate now, either by putting your hand up or in the chat. Otherwise, we'll note that.
I don't even think we should note it. I think it's meant to get the athlete weight back down into a healthy zone. 5 or 6 knot racing is almost useless as an entertainment product anyways, and well beyond the purview of this group. So I actually kind of object to us weighing in on it at all.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, right, I'll ask around the room if there is any other business anybody wishes to raise. Please just put your hand up if there is anything you'd like to bring to the attention of the group. Okay, I'm not seeing anything there, so I think just to finish the meeting, I'm just going to draw it to a close now. Just say a big thanks from me to the staff, especially Michael, and as well as all our VPs and yourselves as members of Events Committee. And I just wish all those involved with the upcoming Youth Sailing Worlds on Garda and of course Paris Olympic Games with the sailing in Marseille every success. There's quite a few people around this table involved with the classes, the officiating, all parts of the sport, and we've got a huge number of volunteers as well as the athletes and coaches, and we just hope they have a fantastic Olympic Games, showcase our sport really well, and look forward to hearing it all about it all in Singapore. So with that, I think that's it from me. I'll say thank you, good night from the UK, as they say in the Eurovision Song Contest, and happy sailing for the next few weeks and months until we meet at the back end of this year. Okay, thank you.